Michael Jordan gets told to stay in his lane after defending a young player. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Michael Jordan's story is one of relentless drive and determination, built from the foundations of his early years. Raised in Wilmington, North Carolina, Jordan's roots were grounded in a strong family structure. His parents, James and Dolores Jordan, instilled in him values that would define not only his character, but also his work ethic throughout his career. His mother, Dolores, was his pillar of support and encouragement, always there to guide him. His father, James, was his mentor and first coach, pushing him to be the best version of himself. Even at an early age, Jordan showed an immense passion for sports, particularly basketball. However, Michael's rise to prominence was anything but guaranteed. He was far from the tallest or most physically imposing kid growing up. In fact, he was cut from the high school varsity basketball team during his sophomore year, a moment that would shape his future. Instead of letting this rejection define him, it ignited a fire within him. Jordan worked tirelessly, committing himself to improving his game in ways that most young athletes could never imagine. He spent hours each day in the gym, pushing himself to become better, faster, and stronger. His determination and work ethic became legendary, and he was determined to show everyone that his early setback was not the end of his story. It was just the beginning. His growth was swift. By his senior year in high school, Jordan had become the best player in the state of North Carolina, a standout athlete who caught the attention of college scouts across the nation. The University of North Carolina, under the guidance of legendary coach Dean Smith, was one of the schools that took note. Jordan's time at UNC would serve as a pivotal chapter in his development, not just as a basketball player, but as a leader. At UNC, Jordan learned how to play the game the right way, through discipline, teamwork, and sacrifice. Coach Smith instilled in him the importance of unselfish play, something that Jordan would carry throughout his career. Even in his first year, Jordan made an immediate impact, playing a crucial role in helping the Tar Heels win the 1982 NCAA championship. In the final moments of the championship game against Georgetown, it was Jordan's clutch jump shot that sealed the victory for UNC. That shot marked the beginning of Jordan's rise to stardom, showing that not only did he have the skills, but he could also perform under pressure. However, it was Jordan's time in college that also showcased his hunger for excellence. He wasn't satisfied with just winning. He wanted to be the best. His competitive nature was undeniable, and every game was another chance to prove himself. His work ethic, developed under the guidance of Coach Smith, was second to none. But it wasn't just his ability on the court that set him apart, it was his mindset. From the moment Jordan stepped onto the college court, he had one goal in mind: to become the greatest basketball player the world had ever seen. As his time at UNC came to an end, Jordan was ready to take the next step. Entering the 1984 NBA draft, there were doubts surrounding his ability to dominate at the professional level. Some questioned whether his scoring ability could translate to the NBA, while others wondered if his athleticism would hold up against the league's best. But Jordan had already proven time and time again that he was not one to shy away from a challenge. In fact, challenges only fueled his ambition. Jordan was selected by the Chicago Bulls with the 3rd overall pick in the 1984 draft. The Bulls were not the dominant force they would become in the 1990s. They were a struggling franchise, in need of a player to change the trajectory of the team. Jordan's arrival was the first step in what would eventually become one of the most successful dynasties in NBA history. However, the early days of Jordan's career were far from easy. He entered a league filled with established stars, each with their own legacies, each with their own personal goals. But Jordan was unlike any player the NBA had seen before. From his very first game in the NBA, Jordan made his presence known. His athleticism, combined with his scoring ability, set him apart. He didn't just rely on his jump shot. He was explosive at the rim, capable of dunking over defenders with ease. Jordan's fierce competitive spirit became evident in every game he played, whether he was facing off against the Boston Celtics' Larry Bird or the Los Angeles Lakers' Magic Johnson. It didn't matter who the opponent was. Jordan approached each challenge the same way, with the goal of winning. Jordan's rookie season was filled with spectacular moments. He averaged 28.2 points per game, earning him the NBA's Rookie of the Year award. His play was mesmerizing, a combination of skill, agility, and raw athleticism that had fans and analysts alike questioning what the future held for this young star. Even though the Bulls had a losing record that season, Jordan's impact was undeniable. He was the lone bright spot on a team that was still finding its identity. His incredible performances began to attract national attention, and it was clear that Michael Jordan was a player who could change the fate of the NBA. However, it wasn't just his offensive abilities that made Jordan stand out. His defense was equally impressive. His relentless pursuit of excellence meant that Jordan didn't just work on one aspect of his game. He worked on every part of it, from his ability to steal the ball and lock down opponents to his leadership on the court. Jordan was building a reputation as a complete player. It wasn't enough to simply be a great scorer. Jordan knew that true greatness would come from being able to impact every part of the game. As his second season began, Jordan's leadership qualities started to emerge. He wasn't just the best player on the court. He was the guy teammates looked to in crunch time. He set the tone with his unyielding work ethic, holding his teammates to the same standards he held himself to. Jordan's mentality was one of constant improvement. Each game was an opportunity to get better, to refine his skills, and to push his teammates to elevate their play. It wasn't just about winning for him. It was about winning the right way. The Chicago Bulls had their star, and now it was time for them to become a contender. Despite the individual brilliance Jordan displayed, the team was still far from championship material. The Bulls had talent, but they lacked the cohesion and chemistry necessary to compete for titles. That would come in time. The foundation was being laid, but it would require patience, growth, and for Jordan to develop into the leader he was destined to be. In the early years, Jordan often had to shoulder the burden of carrying the team by himself, as the Bulls' roster was filled with role players and veterans past their prime. But with every season, Jordan learned how to elevate those around him, how to make his teammates better. He was evolving not just as a player, but as a leader who would one day guide the Bulls to the pinnacle of the NBA. But for now, Jordan's focus remained on becoming the best. His obsession with winning was clear, and with every game, he was one step closer to realizing the greatness that everyone knew was in him. Little did anyone know, the next few years would set the stage for a dynasty that would change the NBA forever. The 1985-86 NBA season was a pivotal year for Michael Jordan. His rookie season had been explosive, with Jordan quickly establishing himself as one of the most exciting young players in the league. Despite playing for a Chicago Bulls team that was still a work in progress, Jordan's individual brilliance was undeniable. He averaged 28.2 points per game, showing his ability to dominate on offense, and earned the NBA's Rookie of the Year award. But, as with any great player, it was the next step in his journey that would ultimately determine how far his career could go. By the start of the 1985-86 season, Jordan had already proven himself as one of the league's brightest stars. However, the question loomed, could he lead the Bulls to championship contention? While Jordan was clearly the Bulls' best player, the team was still lacking the necessary pieces to compete with the powerhouses of the league. The Boston Celtics, Los Angeles Lakers, and Philadelphia 76ers had established themselves as dominant forces, and Chicago was still learning how to put together a contender. Despite this, Jordan's impact on the court was undeniable. In the 1985-86 season, he averaged an astounding 37.1 points per game, a feat that would later become one of his most iconic individual accomplishments. Jordan's ability to score in virtually every way, whether driving to the basket, hitting mid-range jumpers, or finishing with acrobatic layups, made him virtually unstoppable. He could take over games with his offensive prowess, and his fearlessness in attacking defenders only added to his allure. Jordan's performances throughout the season were breathtaking. One of the most notable moments came in a game against the Boston Celtics, where he put up a career-high 63 points. The Celtics were one of the most storied franchises in NBA history, and their defense was formidable. However, none of that mattered when Jordan stepped onto the court. He lit up the scoreboard in one of the most memorable games in NBA history, reminding everyone that he was not just an emerging star, but someone who could compete at the highest level. Despite the Celtics' dominance, Jordan's performance was a statement. He was a player who could not be ignored, no matter how strong the opposition. Despite Jordan's brilliance, the Bulls struggled as a team. The team finished with a subpar 30-52 record, which meant they once again missed the playoffs. While Jordan was the bright spot, it became clear that individual greatness was not enough to overcome a lack of depth and chemistry. This was the moment where Jordan began to realize that while his skills were exceptional, championship success would only come with the right team around him. His growth as a player was clear, but he would need the right support system to make the leap from individual success to team success. For Jordan, the 1985-86 season was a lesson in humility and patience. His personal achievements were remarkable, but it was evident that basketball was a team sport, and his individual success would only get him so far. It was time to think about how he could help elevate his teammates and make them better, rather than simply carrying the load himself. This mindset would shape his development over the coming years and ultimately set the stage for his championship runs with the Bulls. As the following season approached, the Bulls made some key moves to bolster the roster. They selected Brad Sellers in the 1986 NBA draft and began to reshape the team around Jordan. However, the biggest shift came with the arrival of new head coach Doug Collins. Collins was tasked with developing the team into a championship contender, and he knew that Jordan was the centerpiece around which everything had to revolve. Collins recognized that Jordan had the potential to be the greatest player of his generation, and his job was to unlock that potential fully. Under Collins, Jordan's game evolved further. Collins recognized that Jordan's scoring ability was unmatched, but he also understood that for the Bulls to win consistently, Jordan needed to become more than just a scorer. Collins pushed Jordan to refine his playmaking skills, improve his defense, and start trusting his teammates more. While Jordan was undoubtedly the leader, Collins encouraged him to be less of a one-man army and more of a leader who could inspire and elevate his teammates. Jordan's willingness to adapt to this new role marked a turning point in his career. The 1986-87 season saw Jordan's continued dominance. He once again led the league in scoring, this time with a career-high 37.1 points per game, a feat that helped him solidify his reputation as the most prolific scorer in the NBA. But the real transformation came in his approach to the game. Collins had helped Jordan become a more well-rounded player, and for the first time in his career, he began to understand how to use his teammates effectively. While the Bulls still struggled to compete with the league's top teams, Jordan's leadership began to show more clearly. He worked tirelessly on defense, becoming a formidable force on that end of the floor as well. His athleticism allowed him to guard multiple positions, and he used his quickness and instincts to disrupt opposing offenses. Jordan's development into a two-way player was key to his eventual success, as he learned that the road to championships wasn't just about outscoring opponents, but also about being able to lock down on defense when necessary. Jordan's leadership began to show more in his ability to inspire his teammates. While he had always been the best player on the court, he was now becoming the player who could make his teammates better. His passing improved, and his willingness to involve others in the offense made the Bulls a more dangerous team. His chemistry with Scottie Pippen, a young forward who was showing incredible potential, began to blossom. Pippen's defensive ability, combined with Jordan's scoring and playmaking, began to form a dynamic duo that would carry the Bulls to future success. But despite these improvements, the Bulls were still not contenders. They finished the 1986-87 season with a 40-42 record, once again failing to make a serious playoff run. It was clear that Jordan was not just an individual talent. He was the foundation of a team that needed more pieces to be successful. But the franchise was beginning to recognize the value of having a player like Jordan who could elevate the team around him. By the end of the 1980s, the stage was set for Jordan to take the next step in his evolution. The league was dominated by veteran teams like the Celtics, Lakers, and Pistons, and it would take more than just Jordan's brilliance to overcome them. But with his growth as a leader, his commitment to improving every aspect of his game, and his ability to inspire his teammates, it was clear that Jordan was on the verge of something monumental. As the 1990s approached, the expectations for Jordan and the Bulls began to shift. The pressure was mounting. Could Jordan lead his team to the promised land? Could he build the kind of team around him that could win championships? It was in these next years that Jordan would answer those questions, and the path to greatness would reveal itself in ways that no one could have predicted. For now, though, Michael Jordan's journey was far from over. His early years had been defined by personal triumphs, but it was clear that the next chapter would require more than just individual success. It would take a team and a system that could match his hunger for greatness. By the 1988-89 NBA season, Michael Jordan had firmly established himself as one of the best players in the league. The challenges of his early years, being overlooked in high school, missing out on team success, and having to carry an underwhelming Bulls roster, had given way to a new era. Jordan was no longer just a scorer. He was a bona fide superstar, known for his scoring, his defense, and his leadership. But the question remained, could he carry a team to a championship? For much of his early career, Jordan had played as an individual force, putting up incredible numbers and doing everything he could to lift the Chicago Bulls. But despite his individual brilliance, the team had not been able to get past the Eastern Conference Finals. In the 1988-89 season, however, things began to shift. The addition of key players like Brad Sellers and the continued development of Scottie Pippen gave the Bulls a more balanced roster. The team was beginning to form around Jordan, and the idea of Chicago as a true contender began to feel more realistic. Despite Jordan's unmatched scoring ability, he won the scoring title once again that season with an average of 32.5 points per game. His game was evolving. Jordan's defense had always been an underrated part of his game, but in 1988, he was named the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year. He could shut down opposing players with the same intensity that he attacked the basket, and this two-way ability made him a more complete player than many had given him credit for. Jordan's growth wasn't just about scoring. He was becoming the type of leader who could take over games on both ends of the floor. This development was key for the Bulls, as they needed more than just offense to get over the hump. In the 1989 playoffs, the Bulls faced the Cleveland Cavaliers in the first round. The Cavaliers were a young, up-and-coming team, but they had no answer for Jordan. In Game 5 of the series, with the Bulls and Cavaliers tied at 2-2, Jordan did something that would go down in history as one of his most iconic performances. With less than 3 seconds remaining and the Bulls trailing by 1 point, Jordan hit a jumper over Craig Ehlo to win the game. The shot became a symbol of Jordan's ability to perform under pressure, and it marked the beginning of his evolution as not just a great player, but a great winner. The Bulls advanced to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they faced the Detroit Pistons, the reigning Eastern Conference champions. The Pistons, known for their physical, bruising style of play, had been a thorn in Jordan's side for years. Led by Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, and Dennis Rodman, the Pistons' bad boys had bullied their way to the top of the East and had become the team to beat. For Jordan, this series represented more than just another hurdle. It was the moment that would define his career. The Pistons' defense was suffocating, and they knew that the key to stopping the Bulls was to stop Jordan. They physically attacked him, pushing him to the limit with hard fouls and constant pressure. Jordan had struggled in previous matchups with the Pistons, and it seemed like they had the formula to neutralize him. But what separated Jordan from every other player in the league was his mental toughness. Instead of folding under the pressure, he responded by taking his game to the next level. He continued to fight through the Pistons' defense, becoming more determined with every foul, every hit. His competitiveness and his refusal to be intimidated by the Pistons' tactics were the keys to his evolution as a player and as a leader. Despite Jordan's efforts, the Bulls fell to the Pistons in a tough 6-game series. It was another gut-wrenching playoff loss for Jordan, but this time, the defeat came with a silver lining. Jordan had learned something that would be vital to his future success. To win championships, it wasn't enough to be a great individual player. He needed to be able to trust his teammates and to create a system that worked for everyone on the court. Jordan realized that the key to defeating the Pistons, and teams like them, was to play as a unit. The lesson was clear. If Jordan wanted to win, he needed to embrace the idea of team success, not just individual brilliance. That summer, Jordan returned to the gym with a renewed sense of purpose. He worked harder than ever before, not just on his scoring, but on all aspects of his game. He worked on his passing, improving his ability to get his teammates involved, and he continued to refine his defense. Jordan also recognized that the Bulls needed another star to help him shoulder the load. While Scottie Pippen was developing into one of the best players in the league, the Bulls needed someone who could consistently complement Jordan's game. Enter Horace Grant, a powerful forward who brought toughness and energy to the Bulls' frontcourt. Grant's presence gave the Bulls the added dimension they needed. He was a reliable scorer and a strong defender, and his ability to rebound made him an essential piece to the puzzle. With Grant, Pippen, and Jordan, the Bulls had the foundation to compete with the best teams in the league. But the final key to their championship aspirations came in the form of an outsider, Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson was hired as the head coach of the Bulls in 1989, and his arrival marked a turning point for the team. Jackson had been an assistant coach for the Chicago Bulls and had learned under the tutelage of the legendary Red Halsman. His coaching philosophy, which was rooted in the principles of teamwork, patience, and trust, was a perfect fit for Jordan and the Bulls. Jackson recognized that Jordan's individual brilliance was only part of the equation. To truly reach their potential, the Bulls needed a system that would allow them to play as a cohesive unit. Jackson's implementation of the triangle offense was the game changer the Bulls needed. The triangle offense was a system that focused on spacing, ball movement, and the unselfish sharing of the basketball. The system allowed Jordan to still be the focal point of the offense, but it also gave his teammates the freedom to contribute and make plays. The key to the triangle was trust, trusting that every player would do their job, and trusting that the team would succeed as a collective. Jackson's philosophy mirrored Jordan's growth as a player. Jordan had learned that individual brilliance alone wasn't enough. He needed to trust his teammates, and in return, they would trust him. The 1990-91 season was the year everything came together for the Bulls. With Jordan playing the best basketball of his life, Pippen continuing to emerge as a top player, and the addition of Grant, the Bulls were finally ready to compete at the highest level. The team finished the regular season with a 61-21 record, the best in the league, and entered the playoffs with a sense of purpose. They breezed through the first two rounds, defeating the New York Knicks and the Philadelphia 76ers, before facing the Detroit Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals once again. This time, the outcome was different. The Bulls had grown, and Jordan had evolved into not just the best player on the court, but a true leader. He trusted his teammates, and the team responded. The Bulls swept the Pistons in 4 games, finally overcoming their longtime nemesis and advancing to the NBA Finals for the first time in Jordan's career. In the finals, the Bulls faced the Los Angeles Lakers, led by Magic Johnson. Despite the experience and legacy of the Lakers, the Bulls were ready. Jordan's performance in the finals was nothing short of legendary, as he averaged 31.2 points per game and was named Finals MVP. The Bulls won the series 4-1, securing their first NBA championship. It was the moment that had defined Jordan's career, the moment when he proved not just to the world, but to himself, that he was capable of leading a team to the pinnacle of the sport. The Chicago Bulls had finally achieved what they had set out to do, and Michael Jordan had proved that he was not just a scoring machine, but a champion. The team was no longer just Jordan's. It was a team of stars, working together to achieve the same goal. The dynasty had begun, and Michael Jordan's legacy as the greatest player in NBA history was solidified. The 1991-92 season marked the beginning of the Chicago Bulls' ascent to greatness. After securing their first NBA championship the previous year, the team entered the season with a newfound sense of confidence and a clear goal: to defend their title. Michael Jordan, now firmly established as the best player in the world, was more determined than ever to build on his success. The dynamic between him and his teammates, particularly Scottie Pippen, was evolving. Pippen had emerged as a star in his own right, and together with Jordan, they formed one of the most formidable duos in basketball history. The addition of key players like Horace Grant, who had quickly become a crucial part of the Bulls' defense and rebounding, made Chicago a deeper, more versatile team. The coaching of Phil Jackson was also critical in the Bulls' success. Jackson's ability to manage egos, instill a team-first mentality, and maintain a calm presence under pressure were all assets that allowed the team to perform at its best. His implementation of the triangle offense, a system that relied on spacing, ball movement, and trust among teammates, had turned the Bulls into a more cohesive unit. Jordan's personal growth had transformed him from an individual superstar into a true leader, willing to sacrifice personal glory for the betterment of the team. In the regular season, the Bulls finished with a 67-15 record, the best in the league. Jordan's numbers were staggering once again, but his play had evolved. He was no longer just a scorer. He was a complete player, capable of facilitating the offense, defending at an elite level, and lifting his teammates. His unselfishness on the court had improved, and he now trusted Pippen and the other players to help carry the load. The Bulls were a well-rounded team, and it was clear they were poised to repeat as champions. As the playoffs began, the Bulls looked to prove that their championship run the previous year was no fluke. They quickly dispatched the Miami Heat in the first round, winning the series 3-0. The Heat had no answer for Jordan, and the Bulls' defense, led by Pippen and Grant, shut down any offensive threats. The Bulls then moved on to face the New York Knicks, a team that had become known for its physical play and hard-nosed defense. The Knicks were tough, but they were no match for the Bulls' depth and talent. In the Eastern Conference Finals, the Bulls would meet the Cleveland Cavaliers, who had been one of the top teams in the East. The Cavaliers were led by the explosive Brad Daugherty and the sharpshooting Mark Price, but it was clear that their biggest challenge was Jordan. The Bulls' dominance was evident in every game. Jordan took over the series, showing once again that he could carry his team when it mattered most. The Bulls swept the Cavaliers, with Jordan averaging 29.8 points per game in the series. The finals, however, would be a different challenge. The Bulls faced the Portland Trail Blazers, a team that boasted stars like Clyde Drexler, Terry Porter, and Kevin Duckworth. The Blazers had been one of the top teams in the West, and they were a formidable opponent. However, the Bulls' depth and Jordan's leadership were too much for Portland to handle. The first game of the finals was a statement. The Bulls dominated, with Jordan scoring 35 points in the first half alone. His performance in Game 1 set the tone for the series, and the Bulls took a commanding 1-0 lead. Game 2 saw a more competitive effort from the Blazers, but Jordan was in full control. He finished with 39 points, and his ability to hit key shots in the fourth quarter helped the Bulls seal the win. Portland struggled to contain Jordan's offensive onslaught. The Blazers tried to use double teams, but Jordan's passing ability and the Bulls' ability to move the ball made it difficult for them to execute. His unselfishness, combined with his ability to take over games when needed, made Jordan virtually unstoppable. The 1992 Finals also showcased a new facet of Jordan's game, his ability to play within the team concept while still being the clear focal point. He didn't just rely on his scoring to win games. He got his teammates involved, letting them flourish in their roles. This was most evident in Game 6 of the Finals, with the Bulls leading the series 3-2. Game 6 was poised to be the series clincher. Portland had the advantage of playing at home, and they were determined to force a Game 7. But Jordan had other plans. Game 6 was one of the most iconic performances of Jordan's career. With the Bulls up by 3 points late in the game, Jordan made the critical decision to pass the ball to a wide-open John Paxson, who hit a three-pointer to give the Bulls a 6-point lead with under a minute remaining. Jordan's unselfishness in that moment was a testament to his growth as a leader. He knew that the best play for the team was not always the one where he took the shot. The Bulls sealed the victory, winning 97-93, and Jordan had led them to their second consecutive NBA championship. The victory solidified Jordan's legacy as one of the greatest players of all time, but it also marked a turning point in his career. The 1992 championship was not just about Jordan's individual brilliance, it was about the team. Jordan had learned how to balance his desire to be the best with the need to trust his teammates. The Bulls were no longer a one-man show. They were a well-oiled machine, with Jordan as the centerpiece, but with other players stepping up to make key contributions when needed. Pippen's defense, Grant's rebounding, and the clutch shooting of Paxson all played crucial roles in the Bulls' success. Following the championship, Jordan's influence on the game reached new heights. The 1992 NBA Finals were also the stage for his growing global influence. Jordan's success on the court had made him a household name, but his marketability had begun to transcend basketball. His partnership with Nike and the launch of the Air Jordan brand helped transform him into a global icon. The shoes became a cultural phenomenon, not just in the United States, but around the world. Jordan was no longer just a basketball player. He was a symbol of success, a role model, and an entrepreneur. But for Jordan, the most important thing was the game. He was driven not by fame or fortune, but by his insatiable desire to win. The 1992 championship was another step on his journey to becoming the greatest player in NBA history, but it was also a reminder that his work was far from finished. The Bulls' success was built on teamwork, and as long as Jordan was on the court, the goal was always the same: to win. The 1992-93 season was poised to be another championship run for the Bulls, but with the added pressure of defending their title. The team was focused, and Jordan's leadership was the glue that held everything together. The next step in Jordan's journey would be even more challenging, but with his growing influence and the support of his teammates, the Bulls were ready to take on whatever came next. For Michael Jordan, winning wasn't just a goal, it was a way of life. And as the Bulls prepared to take on the challenges of the next season, there was no doubt that the best was yet to come. The 1993 NBA season was a defining year for Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. After winning back-to-back championships in 1991 and 1992, the pressure was on for Jordan and the team to continue their dominance. Jordan had already solidified his place as the best player in the world, but the question now was whether he could sustain that level of excellence and continue leading the Bulls to victory. Despite the team's success, there were external and internal pressures building that would ultimately change the course of Jordan's career. Jordan had already proven himself to be an incredible individual talent, capable of taking over games and carrying the Bulls to victories. But in 1993, he had become much more than just a scorer. He was now a complete player, capable of dominating on both ends of the floor. His defense had improved, and he had become a much more willing passer, getting his teammates involved and helping elevate their game. But even with these improvements, the pressure was mounting. Teams like the New York Knicks, Miami Heat, and the resurging Detroit Pistons team were challenging the Bulls for supremacy, and it was clear that the road to a third consecutive championship would not be easy. The Bulls finished the 1992-93 regular season with a 57-25 record, a testament to their dominance. Jordan, once again, was the leader of the team, averaging 32.6 points per game, leading the league in scoring for the seventh time in his career. Despite his individual brilliance, the team was dealing with internal struggles. Scottie Pippen, while still one of the best players in the league, was beginning to feel the strain of being a secondary option to Jordan. He wanted more responsibility, and tensions within the team began to surface. Additionally, there were questions about whether the Bulls' window of dominance was closing, as the team's aging roster was starting to show signs of wear and tear. The pressure of chasing a third consecutive title was mounting, and Jordan was feeling the weight of those expectations. It wasn't just a game of basketball that was starting to wear him down. There was an emotional toll as well. Jordan's father, James Jordan Sr., had always been his rock. His guidance, support, and presence were a constant source of strength for Michael. In 1993, however, tragedy struck. James Jordan was murdered during a robbery while traveling through North Carolina. The loss of his father devastated Jordan. He was no longer the carefree, playful player he had once been. The joy of the game was now weighed down by the unbearable pain of losing the person who had been his biggest supporter. The grief affected Jordan in ways no one could have anticipated. In the aftermath of his father's death, Jordan made the decision to step away from basketball. In October 1993, at the peak of his career, Michael Jordan retired from the NBA. It was a decision that shocked the basketball world. Jordan was at the height of his powers, but the loss of his father had changed everything. For Jordan, basketball had always been a way to honor his father, and without him, the game no longer held the same meaning. The emotional toll was too much, and Jordan walked away from the sport, leaving the Chicago Bulls to face a future without their leader. Jordan's retirement in 1993 left a gaping hole in the NBA. The league had been built around his star power, and now the question was whether the Bulls could continue their dominance without him. Scottie Pippen stepped up in Jordan's absence, leading the team to a 55-27 record in the regular season. The Bulls reached the Eastern Conference Finals, but ultimately lost to the New York Knicks. Even though the Bulls continued to win, it was clear that they were no longer the same team without Jordan. Pippen was a great player, but he wasn't Jordan. The void left by Jordan's absence was felt across the league, and the NBA had to find a way to move on without its biggest star. Meanwhile, Jordan took time away from the game, trying to find a sense of purpose and peace in his life. He explored new avenues, including pursuing a career in professional baseball. His decision to play baseball was partly in honor of his father, who had always dreamed of him playing the sport. Jordan signed a minor league contract with the Chicago White Sox and played for their Double-A affiliate, the Birmingham Barons. His performance in baseball was less than stellar, but his work ethic and competitive spirit never wavered. Jordan was determined to prove that he could succeed in a sport that was so different from basketball. Despite struggles at the plate, including a batting average of just .202 in 1994, Jordan's time in baseball taught him valuable lessons about perseverance and the importance of mental toughness. After a year in baseball, Jordan began to feel the pull of basketball once again. The game he had left behind was still in his blood, and despite the pain of losing his father, Jordan knew he wasn't finished. In March 1995, Jordan announced that he was returning to the NBA. His decision to come back was met with both excitement and skepticism. Would he still be the same player he was before? Could he return to form after taking nearly 2 years off from the game? The answer, as it turned out, was yes. Jordan's return to the NBA in 1995 was nothing short of miraculous. While it was clear he hadn't yet fully regained his rhythm, the glimpses of the player who had dominated the league were evident. Jordan's first game back was in Indianapolis against the Indiana Pacers, where he wore the number 45, a tribute to his late father, who had been his guiding light. Jordan didn't waste any time making his presence felt. He scored 19 points in his first game back and began to shake off the rust over the next few weeks. His physical conditioning wasn't at its peak, but his basketball IQ and leadership on the court were as sharp as ever. As the 1995-96 season began, the Chicago Bulls began to hit their stride. Jordan returned to his familiar number 23, and the team quickly found its rhythm. The addition of players like Ron Harper, Steve Kerr, and Tony Kukoc gave the Bulls even more depth, and the presence of Jordan made the team the clear favorite to win the championship. With Jordan leading the way, the Bulls finished the regular season with a league-best 72-10 record, setting a new NBA record for most wins in a season. The Bulls were back, and they were on a mission to prove that they were still the team to beat. Jordan's return was the spark the Bulls needed. He led the team with his scoring, playmaking, and leadership. In the playoffs, the Bulls steamrolled their opponents, defeating the Miami Heat, New York Knicks, and Orlando Magic to reach the NBA Finals. There, they met the Seattle Supersonics, a team that had been the class of the Western Conference. Despite the challenge, the Bulls were too strong, with Jordan winning his 4th NBA championship and earning his 4th Finals MVP award. Jordan's return had not only proved that he was still the best player in the world, but it also marked the beginning of the second phase of the Bulls dynasty. The 1995-96 season was a statement to the entire NBA. Michael Jordan was back, and he was as determined as ever to add more championships to his already legendary resume. The road to greatness was far from over for Jordan, and the best was yet to come. The 1996-97 NBA season was another statement year for Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. Following their dominant 72-10 record in the previous season and winning their 4th championship in 6 years, expectations for the Bulls were sky high. The basketball world was eager to see if they could repeat the feat and prove that their success wasn't just a one-time occurrence. With Jordan back at the helm, the team had already established itself as the most formidable force in the NBA, but the journey to another championship would require maintaining their focus and commitment to the game. As the season began, the Bulls knew they had a target on their backs. Other teams had been watching closely the previous season, and everyone wanted to dethrone the reigning champions. Jordan, however, had been through this before. He understood that the key to sustained success wasn't just about the number of wins in the regular season, but how the team executed in the postseason. For Jordan, each game, each practice, was about perfecting his craft and elevating his teammates. The team's roster remained relatively stable, with the core of Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Horace Grant leading the charge. But the addition of Steve Kerr, Tony Kukoc, and Ron Harper had made the team more versatile and unpredictable. Jackson's coaching remained pivotal, as his ability to manage egos and create an atmosphere of unity had been critical to the Bulls' success. The team was fluid and capable of adjusting to any challenge, whether it was an offense-heavy team like the Utah Jazz or a physical defense-first squad like the Detroit Pistons. The players understood their roles, and there was no doubt that Jordan was still the centerpiece, the player who could take over a game at any moment. Despite losing key pieces like B.J. Armstrong and Luke Longley, the team gelled even more, showing a maturity that made them almost unbeatable. Jordan's leadership wasn't just about scoring points. It was about making everyone else around him better. The unselfishness he had developed over the years became a central theme. Jordan wasn't just relying on his scoring. He trusted Pippen to run the offense and Kukoc to provide scoring off the bench. The team's defense had improved as well, as Pippen became even more versatile and aggressive. Jordan, ever the tenacious defender, remained one of the best on that end of the floor, helping lead the Bulls to one of the best defensive units in the league. Throughout the regular season, the Bulls cruised to another dominant performance, finishing with a 69-13 record. It was a reminder to the league that this was no ordinary team. Every time Jordan stepped onto the court, there was a sense that victory was inevitable. Whether it was dropping 40 points against the Miami Heat or showing off his skills against the rival New York Knicks, Jordan's hunger for success hadn't diminished. His work ethic remained as relentless as ever, and that drove his teammates to match his intensity. There was a fire in the locker room that no other team could match, and it was all fueled by Jordan's mentality. He was determined to keep the team on track and make sure they were prepared for whatever obstacles they might face. The Bulls easily dispatched their first-round opponents, the Washington Bullets, with little trouble. The series was a mere formality, with Jordan and Pippen leading the charge as the Bulls swept Washington 3-0. While the competition wasn't stiff, the Bulls' level of play remained high. It wasn't about the opponent. It was about maintaining the standard. For Jordan, the first round was just a warm-up. The real challenge would come in the later rounds. In the Eastern Conference semifinals, the Bulls faced the Atlanta Hawks, a team led by a solid group of players like Dikembe Mutombo and Mookie Blaylock. The Hawks, though talented, were no match for the Bulls' firepower. Jordan dominated, and Pippen's defense became even more of a game-changer. The Bulls easily defeated Atlanta in 4 games, and the Bulls' momentum continued to build. Then came the challenge that everyone had been waiting for, the Eastern Conference Finals. The Bulls were set to face the Miami Heat, a team that had grown significantly over the years, with stars like Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway. The Heat had given the Bulls fits in past years, and this was a series that many believed could go either way. Miami was physical and had a deep roster, but the Bulls were not to be deterred. They understood what was at stake. The series was a gritty, hard-fought battle. Miami, led by the defense of Mourning and the scoring of Hardaway, was determined to push the Bulls to their limit. Games were close, but Jordan, as always, took control when it mattered most. He averaged over 30 points per game in the series, leading his team to a 4-1 victory. It wasn't just Jordan's scoring that set the tone, though. His leadership on both ends of the floor, along with Pippen's lockdown defense and the bench contributions from Steve Kerr and Ron Harper, proved to be too much for the Heat. Having defeated the Heat, the Bulls now looked forward to the NBA Finals. Their opponents were the Utah Jazz, led by the incomparable duo of Karl Malone and John Stockton. The Jazz had been one of the top teams in the West for years, but they had never been able to get past the Bulls in the finals. This would be their chance. But for Jordan, the motivation was clear. This was another challenge, another step toward greatness. He had already proven that he could lead his team to a title, but now it was about defending that title and proving once again that the Bulls were the best. Game 1 of the finals was a statement. Jordan dominated, putting up 31 points and leading the Bulls to a 95-88 win. Utah came out strong, but Jordan's clutch shooting and the Bulls' defense kept the game in their control. The game set the tone for the series, showing the Jazz that the Bulls were not going to let up. While Malone and Stockton did their best to keep Utah competitive, the Bulls' depth and experience proved to be the difference. The series was far from over, but Game 1 was a reminder of just how dominant Jordan could be when the stakes were high. The finals saw another memorable moment in Game 5, known as the flu game. Despite battling illness, Jordan led the Bulls to victory with 38 points, a performance that remains one of his most iconic. The image of Jordan bent over, visibly exhausted, yet still hitting clutch shots, became a symbol of his willpower and determination. This was the essence of Michael Jordan, the ability to push through pain, adversity, and fatigue to ensure his team succeeded. In Game 6, with the Bulls leading 3-2 in the series, Jordan was not about to let his team fall short. He came out strong, scoring 39 points and securing the victory for the Bulls in a 90-86 win. The Bulls claimed their 5th NBA championship, and Jordan was named Finals MVP for the 5th time in his career. The win was a testament to the Bulls' resilience, and Jordan's dominance on the court had proven once again that he was the best player in the world. The 1997 championship solidified the Bulls as a dynasty. It wasn't just about Jordan's individual brilliance, it was about the team. The Bulls had become a well-oiled machine, with each player fulfilling their role and contributing to the success of the team. Jordan had proven that he could win with his teammates, and he had taken another step toward defining his legacy. The road to greatness had not been easy, but with 5 championships in 7 seasons, Michael Jordan had proven beyond a doubt that he was the greatest of all time. The 1997-98 season loomed, and it was clear that the end of the Bulls dynasty was near. However, Jordan's hunger for more championships was far from over, and the next chapter in his career would be a final, defining push for the ultimate legacy. The 1997-98 NBA season was a defining year for both Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. They were coming off their 5th championship in 7 seasons, and the team was once again poised for greatness. However, despite the Bulls' dominance in the 1990s, it was clear that this season would be different. The championship window was closing. Phil Jackson, the architect of their success, was in the final year of his contract, and tensions within the organization were beginning to rise. The team's internal struggles were becoming harder to ignore, and while the Bulls were undeniably the best team in the league, they faced significant uncertainty regarding the future. Jordan, too, was dealing with his own personal challenges. At 35 years old, he was beginning to feel the physical toll of a decade of dominating basketball. The pressures of constant competition, the responsibility of carrying the team, and the wear and tear of his body were beginning to take their toll. But despite these challenges, Jordan was more focused than ever. The 1997-98 season would mark the end of an era for the Bulls, and Jordan was determined to go out on top, not just as a champion, but as the greatest player in NBA history. From the start of the season, it was clear that Jordan and the Bulls were going to make one final push for glory. The team had already made history, but they weren't finished yet. Jordan's leadership was critical in keeping the team motivated and focused. Despite the media attention surrounding the team's impending breakup, Jordan's focus remained singular: to win another championship. As he had always done, Jordan rose to the occasion, playing with the same intensity and hunger that had defined his career. In the early part of the season, the Bulls were playing at a high level. Jordan was still putting up stellar numbers, averaging 28.7 points per game, and his ability to take over games remained unmatched. However, the team's chemistry was starting to crack under the strain of the season's pressures. The tension between management and the players grew, particularly with the contract situation surrounding key figures like Scottie Pippen. Pippen, who had been instrumental to the Bulls' success, was unhappy with his contract and felt underappreciated by the organization. His frustration boiled over, and there were moments during the season when his relationship with management seemed strained. Despite these distractions, the Bulls continued to win. Pippen, while clearly frustrated, was still playing at an elite level, and his all-around game was essential to the team's success. However, It was clear that the team's dynasty was nearing its end. The players knew it, the media knew it, and the fans knew it. This was going to be the last dance for the Bulls. The team's goal was clear: to win one last championship before the inevitable changes came. In the 1998 playoffs, the Bulls were once again dominant, facing familiar challenges in their quest for a sixth title. They easily dispatched the New Jersey Nets in the first round, winning the series 4-0. Jordan's performances in the first round were nothing short of spectacular, showing that he still had the ability to take over games and lead the team. But despite the ease of the victory, it was clear that the Bulls were not the same team they had been in their previous championship runs. The stakes had been raised, and every game felt more intense than the last. In the Eastern Conference semifinals, the Bulls faced the Charlotte Hornets, led by the explosive Jamal Mashburn and the tough Alonzo Mourning. The Hornets were a team on the rise, but they were no match for the experience and firepower of the Bulls. The series went to 5 games, but the Bulls were able to close it out with another dominant performance from Jordan. It wasn't just about Jordan's scoring. His leadership, his ability to inspire his teammates, and his calm under pressure were what ultimately won the series. Jordan continued to prove that, even as the years passed, he was still the best player on the court. The most difficult challenge came in the Eastern Conference Finals, where the Bulls faced the Indiana Pacers. Led by Reggie Miller, the Pacers had grown into one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference and were hungry for a chance at the finals. Miller, known for his clutch shooting and fiery personality, had a personal rivalry with Jordan, and the series was destined to be intense. The Pacers pushed the Bulls to the brink, taking the series to 7 games. It was the closest the Bulls had come to being eliminated in years, and the games were physical, emotional, and hard-fought. Jordan was once again called upon to carry the Bulls, and he did so with typical brilliance. He averaged over 30 points per game in the series, showing once again that, when the pressure was at its highest, he could still perform. In Game 7, Jordan's leadership proved to be the difference. His 28 points, combined with Pippen's all-around play and the defensive intensity of the Bulls, led them to a hard-fought victory. The Pacers had given them all they could handle, but in the end, the Bulls advanced to the NBA Finals once again. In the finals, the Bulls faced the Utah Jazz, a team that had come close to winning the title in recent years, but had always fallen short. The Jazz were led by the incredible duo of Karl Malone and John Stockton, and this was their best chance to dethrone the Bulls and win their first championship. The series was an intense battle between two teams that were hungry for the title, but it was clear that Jordan was not going to let his team fall short. The first few games were competitive, with the Jazz taking Game 1 in Salt Lake City. However, the Bulls responded in Game 2, with Jordan scoring 37 points and leading the Bulls to a 93-88 win. As the series shifted to Chicago, the Bulls gained the upper hand, taking a 3-1 series lead. Jordan's ability to rise to the occasion and perform under pressure was once again on full display. Game 5 of the finals was one of the most memorable moments of Jordan's career. The Bulls were up 3-1, and a win would secure their 6th championship. Despite being visibly ill, suffering from flu-like symptoms, Jordan played one of the greatest games of his career. The flu game, as it would later be called, saw Jordan score 38 points and lead the Bulls to a crucial 90-88 victory. His resilience and determination in the face of adversity were a testament to his greatness, and the image of him being helped off the court by his teammates after the game became an iconic symbol of his competitive spirit. With the series now 3-2 in favor of the Bulls, the Jazz still had one more chance to force a Game 7. However, Game 6 was another classic Jordan performance. He scored 45 points, leading the Bulls to an 87-86 win and securing their 6th NBA championship. The victory gave the Bulls their second three-peat, and Jordan's role as the leader of the dynasty was solidified. Jordan was named Finals MVP for the 6th time in his career, and it was clear that this would be his final championship with the Bulls. The 1998 NBA Finals marked the end of an era. The dynasty was over, and the Chicago Bulls would never be the same. The final victory was bittersweet, as Jordan's future with the team was uncertain. But as he stood on the court with his teammates, holding the championship trophy one last time, It was clear that Michael Jordan had left an indelible mark on the sport of basketball. His journey had come full circle, and his legacy as the greatest player to ever play the game was now complete. As Michael Jordan walked off the court for the final time in the 1998 NBA Finals, a sense of finality swept over him. 6 championships, 5 MVPs, countless accolades, and an unforgettable legacy. The Chicago Bulls had achieved what they set out to do, and Jordan had fulfilled his purpose. But as he left the court, it wasn't just the weight of that final win that pressed on him. It was the realization that his basketball journey was nearing its end. After years of dominance, this victory marked both the culmination of an era and the beginning of a new chapter in his life. The Chicago Bulls' victory in the 1998 NBA Finals was the zenith of their dynasty, the closing of one of the most iconic periods in NBA history. Jordan had led the Bulls to 2 separate three-peats, and this final victory sealed his place as the undisputed greatest of his generation. The Last Dance, as the 1997-98 season came to be known, was more than just a farewell to a dominant team. It was the end of an era. The team would never be the same again, as the organization was set to dismantle the core that had defined the Bulls for the past decade. For Jordan, the decision to retire for the second time wasn't easy, but it felt like the right one. At 35 years old, with the weight of the world and his own personal expectations on his shoulders, he knew that it was time. His body had begun to show signs of wear, and the emotional toll of carrying the team for so long had started to affect him. Jordan had already accomplished everything he had set out to do in basketball. He had proved he was the best player in the world, and his desire to continue winning championships had been met. But after the emotional highs of the past 6 years, Jordan was ready to step away, at least for the time being. As he walked away from the game, there was no bitterness, only satisfaction. Jordan had achieved everything an athlete could dream of. His name would live on as the greatest to ever play the game. He had brought unparalleled glory to the Chicago Bulls and changed the trajectory of basketball as a whole. The NBA had become a global phenomenon, and Jordan had been the driving force behind it. The impact of his career stretched far beyond the court. He had transcended the game. His work ethic, his competitive spirit, and his relentless pursuit of greatness had become the standard by which future generations of athletes would measure themselves. Jordan's retirement left a void in the NBA, one that could not be filled. The Chicago Bulls would go on to struggle without him, and the league would slowly transition into the post-Jordan era. But while the players who came after him would bring their own flair and talent to the game, none would capture the world's attention in the same way. Jordan's shadow loomed over the sport for years to come, his influence on the game remaining powerful and present in every new superstar that emerged. In the years following his retirement, Jordan's impact on the sport continued. His brand, Air Jordan, had become synonymous with success, and his name was still a driving force in the world of sports marketing. Jordan had revolutionized the way athletes could use their platform, not just to make money, but to inspire people around the world. His partnerships with Nike became more than just business deals. They became symbols of aspiration. Kids everywhere wanted to be like Mike. His influence reached beyond basketball courts, and his success helped pave the way for athletes in all sports to maximize their earning potential and personal brand. While his influence on the game was undeniable, it wasn't just his achievements on the court that defined Jordan's legacy. It was his mindset, his determination, his drive, and his constant pursuit of excellence became the standard for what it meant to be great. Jordan's success was not simply a product of his immense physical talent. It was a result of his ability to outwork everyone else. His dedication to becoming the best, no matter the obstacles in his path, set him apart from every other player who came before and after him. Even in retirement, Jordan continued to shape the NBA. In 2010, he made a historic move by becoming the principal owner of the Charlotte Hornets. His transition from player to executive wasn't without its challenges, but Jordan's competitive spirit remained. He took on his new role with the same intensity he had shown on the court, determined to make the Hornets a competitive franchise. While he couldn't replicate the success of his playing days in terms of championships, his impact on the game remained strong. Jordan's business acumen, combined with his leadership experience, helped redefine the role of athletes as team owners, setting the stage for future generations of players to take on similar responsibilities. Jordan's story was one of perseverance, excellence, and unyielding belief in himself. His journey from a kid in Wilmington, North Carolina, to the greatest player in basketball history was not one of instant success. It was a story of hard work, overcoming adversity, and pushing himself beyond his limits. Jordan faced challenges on the court, in his personal life, and within the confines of the game. But through it all, he remained resolute in his desire to be the best. His determination to achieve greatness made him not just a champion but an icon. And then, in 2003, after a brief return to the NBA with the Washington Wizards, Jordan made his final retirement official. At 40 years old, he stepped away from the game for the last time, having played his final season in a role that was far removed from the one he had once occupied at the pinnacle of the sport. His time with the Wizards didn't replicate the success he had with the Bulls, but it didn't matter. The legacy of his career was already sealed. He had brought the NBA to new heights, changed the landscape of the game, and inspired countless individuals across the globe. Jordan's career was a story of resilience, growth, and ultimately triumph. He had proven not just to himself, but to the world, that greatness was something that could be earned through hard work, sacrifice, and an unyielding desire to be the best. It was never just about winning. It was about making every moment count, about striving for something bigger than oneself. Even when the final buzzer sounded on his career, Jordan's legacy lived on in the countless players who came after him, the fans who continued to admire him, and the sport he helped shape into the global phenomenon it is today. His story had come full circle. From the boy who was once overlooked to the man who changed the game, Michael Jordan's journey had transcended basketball. His impact was immeasurable, and his place in history as the greatest player to ever play the game was unquestionable. The final chapter of his career had closed, but Michael Jordan's legacy would live on forever.